We have to decide what we can do and stay within the reasons of the probable. Now, one of the things we should not do, but which we nearly always have a wild intent to do, and that is we should not try to change other people by telling them what to do. There is no successful way of reforming an individual who doesn't want to be reformed. And many people join organizations and even religions because these religions and organizations demand very little integrity of their followers. You cannot do it by talking, nor can anyone else talk you into doing it. The great question is the inner experience in yourself of perception and reflection, of knowing and seeing in your own life what needs doing, and then developing the resources that enable you to do it. Now you can go along and you can say later, I wish I'd studied a language. Then study it. I wish I could get some kind of work in which I could continue at least part-time development of my artistic instincts. It can be done if the individual wants to badly enough. In every case, it is the willpower taking over to accomplish what the mind and the emotions tell us is best for us. Now, with that combination, you cannot beat. But until it is really established, if one falters, the others fail. So it is very necessary to have the integrity to make a right decision. Now, most people do not know with certainty what is a right decision on all matters. Lots of folks are well-meaning, but they do not really know what they should be doing, and do not see just exactly how to find out. And this, of course, brings into focus one of the most important phases of human life, and that is religion. If the individual belongs to a reasonable religion, that religion will tell him what constitutes a good life. It will tell him what he should do and what he should not do. It will tell him about the Golden Rule and the Ten Commandments. It will help him to discover what the greatest minds the world has ever known have established as working principles upon which to build life career. Now, it doesn't follow that you have to believe or accept all of these different doctrines of faith. But if you look around you in society using your perceptives and your reflectives, you will find that most of these great systems of faith have stood the test of time because they have been supported by irrefutable evidence. We know, basically, that we should not kill. We know, basically, that we should not steal. And wherever we kill, we're in trouble, and wherever we steal, we're in trouble. And whether we're caught or not is not the important point. To break the principle of integrity in ourselves is to get into trouble. Many people have wandered away from their religions or compromised them simply because they've accepted the religion as a creed. Some have moved from difficult faiths to simple ones. A few have moved in the opposite direction. But the proof of that, again, is through the use of the perceptive and reflective faculties in your own constitution. It is not very long, or take very long, or very difficult to find out that thou shalt not kill is a pretty good law. You can look around you in every direction, national, social, economic, industrial, political. And destruction is not good. And the power that destroys ultimately destroys itself. So these principles can be supported not by the dogmas of a religion, but by the very faculties that man possesses within himself. He can see these things. And if he cannot see them, it is simply because he hasn't looked for them, or because he had some attitude in himself and closed his eyes when they came along. These laws and rules are obvious, and we cannot escape their inevitability. We cannot escape the importance and ability to face practically all the rules of life. Perhaps first and most of all, that we have to have an enduring faith in some great power, the power that created these things. And if you open your eyes and listen and think, you will see that the universe in which we live was not created by a fumbler. It was not created without understanding, insight, and consciousness superior to anything that we know. So whatever it was that created it and created us, it's a good idea to obey its rules, to try if possible to glorify rather than desecrate that which has been given to us. So religion can help us to put a foundation under things, but most of all it helps us to tell what direction to look in order to find the rules working. The rules that are working we can see in history, in science, in theology, politics, education, in industry. In all of these systems, the rule breakers are always in trouble. And no matter how glorious and wonderful and spectacular an area is, in the long run it crumbles and leaves everybody worse off. It is therefore possible for the individual to quietly sit down and decide in his own mind, not by the aid of the textbooks, not by political systems, not by atheistic scholars, but determine for himself what he believes about the source of his own existence. Because it's his own existence he's thinking about. It's the source of this that is of the most immediate concern to himself. Can he understand the reason for his own being? What is he? Why is he? How is he? And he has to somehow decide that type of question in order to get the power to perceive and reflect upon what is happening around him. Once he gets his rules straight and uses his faculties to observe their function in society, he is on comparatively safe ground. Many people make misstatements, but nature makes few mistakes. And whatever nature ordains, that is correct. And whatever man discovers to be the laws governing natural procedure, those laws are the safest things to stay with that we know. And it is important to keep them, and keep them every day of our lives, so that we really will do probably what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to sit here planted on benches and chairs the rest of our existence. We are not supposed to live until we die, and then somebody else takes over. We are much more important than this, without being egocentrically important. We are growing things, revealing and releasing a power of the divine through ourselves. We are trying desperately to be good children of the eternal plan. We want to know something about the divinity that dwells within us. We want to know how we can serve that, and how we can grow in grace and greatness, truly, by obeying the very basic humanitarian rules of existence. And somehow out of it all, we know the answer lies that there will be no solution to this until we really experience the oneness of all religious beliefs and the brotherhood of all peoples, of all races, all nations, and all persuasions. The unified world can endure. The divided world will perish. We have already divided it and subdivided it time and time again. One dictator after another has strutted across the stage. And still, the end is not yet. And now it seems that this mammoth process of trying to destroy the inalienable rights of human beings is going on a higher tempo than ever before. But actually, all of it depends upon a kind of subtle acceptance. The individual passing over it lightly because it's advantageous to him at the moment to make the most he can of the contracts that these situations set up. But we cannot validate this attitude. So we can become again like children. Children love everything and are always asking questions. They're always amazed and full of wonder. They're always living in a world of great potential, great possibility, and they have a strange and sometimes unreasonable respect for their elders. These children are physical children. We are mental and emotional children. We are not truly mature. When a mature person comes along, we generally assassinate them because we do not know how to handle the situation. We are still growing through a period of extreme egotism when we think we know more than there is to know, and an extreme selfishness in which we want to get more than there is to get. These factors are damaging us, and will damage us as long as we endure them. So whenever the opportunity comes for the individual to support something that is going in the right direction, this is important. If he has the opportunity to change his own point of view and be better than he is now, it is his duty. Because after all, we also like to think of something else. We like to think that the human being has an immortality, that the human being is not something that is going to lie down in the grave and die forever. Many people who have short thinking on these subjects like to assume it makes very little difference because we're going to be dead and that's that. Now, if we use perspective thinking and receptive thinking, we are going to realize that there's something wrong with our attitude toward the continuity of ourselves. No intelligent providence will create something, place it in a condition of constant stress, demand something from it more than is normally expected, and then at the time of age and old weakness of faculties, simply destroy this thing. There is simply no reason for the existence of the human being if you tuck him away in forest lawn forever. This is not reasonable. Nothing in nature dies. Science is beginning to discover this. Everything is changing forms, changing appearances, changing cycles of manifestation, but nothing begins or ends. Space does not begin or end. Time does not. Life does not. There is an infinite manifestation of life. Life going on forever. Life vital today as on creation's primal morn. Therefore, the individual looking around and trying to explain himself comes finally to the realization that any explanation of himself which ends with his own physical decrepitude frustrates the whole purpose of his existence. If he reflects upon his own mortality, he will lose his own humanity. They cannot dwell together. At the moment we deny the immortality of the human soul, we deny God's creative power. We also deny the reason for anything. Now, if we deny the reason for anything, and it was a pleasant situation, we might even exonerate that. If things here were wonderful and happy, we might say, well, I'm satisfied, I've had my span. But with things very difficult here, there seems to be no reason why we should assume that a physical life consummates our growth, releases our potentials, fulfills our destiny, or glorifies the divine power that created us. So out of the problems of thoughtfulness and reflection upon phenomena, reflection upon that which is perceived, comes the recognition of the immortality of the human soul. It has existed from the dawn of time. It is one of man's first adventures, was the discovery of the eternality of himself. So if we are actually this eternal beings, then we have all the more reason to recognize the infinite potential of growth. If we are really human beings, we're in a kind of school. And in this school there are many grades. And we cannot say I've finished my education because I graduated from kindergarten cum laude. I know that there are cases now where they are giving cap and gown to puppy dogs that have fulfilled their training requirements. But this is not just exactly what we need at the moment, most of all. What we need is to realize that we're always graduating from something, but to graduate from almost anything we know is to enter in the first grade of something else. The individual who has graduated from the ordinary ways of life is challenged instantly by a greater way of life. And the fulfillment of any step that we take is the first step towards something better. Therefore, we are eternally growing. This makes another important contribution to our well-being, and that is long-range thinking. The moment we stop thinking of life as terminating at some given time, not certain or uncertain, instead of that, we begin to think of ourselves as ever-existing life, moving through an infinite diversity of manifestations, but always and forever growing and unfolding. And that everything we do is a foundation upon which to build something else. If we are lazy here for several lifetimes, we simply set back our own development. We are less than we could be if we had kept on growing thoughtfully and carefully every day. Now, thinking about survival in this sense of the word, we can definitely take into consideration that no matter what we do, we will not finish it. The great architect weeps because he needs more time to learn. Hokusai, the great Japanese artist, wept because he could not be a great artist unless he was able to live to be 100 years, and he didn't make it. All the painters, the musicians, all the great thinkers of the world have had to lay down from their labors. They've had to put aside their tools. They've had to rest for a while. And in many cases they have grudged this interference with the infinite growth of things. But in nature, these rest periods are just as useful as the periods of labor. So when we begin to grow here, and begin to study life, and begin to take on more consideration for the values of living, this is because we are just starting on another course. We are going to use what we learn today for the rest of an interminable and unknown existence. We are going to use what we live on now as the basis of our thoughts, our emotions, tomorrow and then tomorrow. Little by little, upon the foundations that you start today, the whole future develops. And the individual has a much better reason for living, much happier conviction about self and circumstance, if he is able to think in terms of this larger life. Now, some think that it's a great penalty to have to live again. That's only because they haven't done so well this time. But there is no need for penalty. People who have really achieved much are not regarding themselves as penniless or penalized. And when the time comes to rest from labor, there is something that happens to these people. They drop off the physical body, yes, but that which they have learned goes on to enrich learning forever. The dreams they have started, they will dream again. And the whole of humanity moves forward because each individual grows a little every day. And that is why we strive desperately to grow a little every day. And in order to do it, we have two great examples. We have the examples of the great religions of the world and the messages that they have brought. Messages which have stood over the questions and doubts of ages and have survived to our time. And the other message comes to us from nature around us. The outer world we observe through reflection and perception. The inner world through meditation and prayer. These processes, working together, help to produce a normal person. They help us to fulfill the needs and responsibilities which are making us grow toward the infinite will which we seek to fulfill. We are all just, working along in a big pattern. And every time they invent a new telescope, the pattern looks bigger But the pattern out there isn't as big as it looks, strangely enough, because the pattern out there is not in conflict with itself. What we see through the telescope is getting along all right. It is fulfilling its purpose. We don't hear any reports coming to us of great social objections from anywhere. There is no evidence that the universe is mad at itself or anything of that nature. It is fulfilling. It is going on. And therefore, the whole story of nature, whether it be in mathematics or physics or biology, the whole story is one of law forever fulfilling itself. And therefore, and essentially, it's very simple. It is simply truth expressing itself in its own way. Man, however, is a little more complicated. He doesn't see these things. He doesn't see this clear flow of realities through the environment in which he lives. They're there, but he doesn't see them. And he cannot force other people to see them. But he can begin to discover for himself his own place in everlastingness. The Egyptians referred to this condition beyond what we know as everlastingness, that which goes on and on and on. And while most of us live here in time, we were created originally to be fulfilled in everlastingness. And everlastingness means the joy of growing forever, the joy of learning more every day, the joy of loving more sincerely and deeply every day, until finally we come to that end in which all virtues are one, and all virtues rest in an unknown but eternal power, which we can never understand until we are returned to it in complete union and foreverness. But we all have an opportunity just every day to learn a new lesson. We can learn it from the neighbor and the gardener. We can learn it from the merchant and the shopkeeper. We can learn it in the car. We can learn it anywhere. There are always lessons to learn, and they all point in the same direction, that the individual must fulfill himself, must do all that he can to be that self which is locked within him. And if he succeeds in doing that and fulfilling his own proper place in the divine plan, he'll come out all right. He may have a few bumps and a few scars before he gets there, but he will realize that he is the master of his own destiny. He is the captain of his own soul, and it is up to him to start to steer this vessel of himself toward the ultimate harbor which we are all seeking to find. If we do these things thoughtfully and wisely and lovingly, we'll get along all right. Oh, thanks a lot.